Hi there, fiber friends. Thank you for tuning into the Fiber Artist Podcast today. First things first, I've got a discount for you. If you're new to the podcast and to my fiber shop, you get 20% off at niromastudio.com, where we have the best selection of colors and highest quality rope and weaving fibers. Use the code FIBERPOD for 20% off your first order off of niromastudio.com. And now to the good stuff. My guest today is Alyssa Ki of Solip DIY. You might recognize Alyssa from her signature style of creating a woven garden of organic and bountiful florals. She works in macrame techniques, crochet, and needle felting into her weaving work. It's truly stunning. If you haven't checked her out, go follow her on Instagram at Solip DIY. That's SOLIP DIY, and online at solipdiy.com. I really love this conversation. We actually chat a little less about the fiber in this episode, and we get a bit more personal. Since we are both Korean American, we had some similarities and a lot of differences, actually, and we share a lot of stories. So while you might not relate to all of it, I hope you enjoy the stories we tell nonetheless. And without further ado, here's Alyssa. Thanks for joining me today, Alyssa. I guess before we get into everything, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and let people know where to find you online?
Hi, my name is Alyssa, and you can find me at it's Solip DIY, so SOLIP DIY. That's my Instagram handle, and then my website is just solipdiy.com.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'd love to know, because I've been following you for a really long time. Oh, well, actually, I'm going to be honest with everybody here. This is our second time recording, because our first time, I think we were both a little bit off. I know I definitely was, because I had sprained my ankle the day before, and that night before we recorded, and again, I think we recorded kind of early, but that night before I got zero sleep. So I was
I think you mentioned that.
Yeah, my brain was completely not working. And I'm I couldn't think of follow-up questions. I'm and then when I got off the phone with you, I was what the hell? What were we talking about? And then I was wait, I should have asked about this and this and this. So anyway, we are recording again. Thank you for giving your time again for this. But yeah, so I'm sure some of this will be repeat from what we talked about before, but all good information. Okay. That said, I would love to know, because I've been following you for a while, because I remember discovering you on Instagram. I totally remember the first weaving that it was with your floral weavings. And I was holy shit, this is super different. And I have never seen anything like it. But I just would love to know, what is your history and background with finding fiber art?
So I guess with fiber art, I first started weaving in 2018. And I first dabbled in a little embroidery. And then one of the artists whose embroidery I really liked, Elizabeth Paul.
I know. Yeah.
She posted some weavings, and I was really interested in that aspect. And then I found a couple YouTube videos and just kind of dove head first in teaching myself, and then purchasing classes and kind of going from there.
Awesome. So what about the embroidery? Let's take a step back and even go back into that. When did you get into that, and how did you get into it, and what kind of things were you making?
I didn't. I was interested. That's what caught my attention first.
Oh, got you.
And then I think I made one little guy. I think I made there's these old Korean houses called hanuks, and I wanted to embroider one. And I think the pendant was literally this big, and it took maybe 2 hours to embroider something so tiny. And it just, after that experience, it wasn't. I discovered embroidery wasn't for me.
Right. It didn't catch, you didn't catch the flame, the same kind of flame you did with weaving.
Definitely not. No.
Yeah. So what about, so when did you figure out that you wanted to kind of focus on making floral weavings?
So flowers is always something I love floral arrangements. I work full time in events, so I get to see a lot of floral arrangements. And I wanted to make a piece that was complete on its own. So something I guess you could say fringeless, in terms of the whole weaving would be the floral,
the aspect. Floral vines and leaves. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yep.
So the weaving would be the bouquet in its entirety. And I experimented and wanted to create that. And it took a couple months to really get it down, but
so cool.
I think the piece you found was, I think, my first real, 3 months after starting it, I finally finished it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it was in your brain for a long time, it seems. Now it makes sense, actually. Now that you like mention your event work and that you are looking at florals all the time, and especially with Instagram, even with like the floral, I feel like the floral community exploded too. Like I was seeing types of arrangements that I've never seen before. My sister would send me all these Instagram accounts because she's super into flowers. I can't even remember them now, but they would, I mean, it was like stuff that you've really never seen. It's interesting.
Especially installations.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And just like where they would be like abstract, like these abstract arrangements. It's interesting. My mom used to do, have you heard of Ikebana? It's like a
Yes, like, yeah, when they have like the one or two.
Yeah, I guess it's, I don't even know if it's a style. I know it's Japanese, but I don't know if it's like a style or a school of arranging or something, but she used to study that because she would do like our church flower arrangements, and she never wanted it to look like, she's like really snobby in terms of aesthetics. And so I think like she wanted it to look like super like, you know, it's like modern 80s, you know what I mean? And so she would do all the like, whatever, what is it called? Like on the pulpit, like all those arrangements or whatever. But she,
right.
Yeah, I keep on. So anyway, I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent, but yeah. So tell me, like, have you always been sort of a creative person?
I would say yes. When I was younger, I did a lot of creative writing, and then my sister taught me how to like make beaded jewelry, and then I ended up going to school for photography. So I would say, in terms of like that side of the brain, or in terms of being creative, I've definitely fallen on that end of the spectrum.
Yeah. So did you you went to school for photography? Like you majored in photography?
I did.
That's so cool. How did that see for me? That's like so interesting as a fellow Asian, as a fellow Korean American. Like when I was in high school, I never even saw that as a possibility. Was that something that like you were supported through? And like, how did you even come up with knowing that existed? I mean, like I like grew up in the Midwest, so it was like I just didn't see creative careers at all. Even though, yes, we had newspapers, and I knew people were photographers, but I just like didn't see it as like a viable career path. What sort of gave you that idea, and when did you even pick up photography?
So I have an older sister. She's 8 years older than me, and she's my absolute hero. And I think it was like in middle school, we were just sitting down, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do or what I wanted to go to school for. And she was like, "You like photography, you like to travel. Why don't you just go into photojournalism?" And I was like, "You're right." And that's just what I went for.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
All I needed was for her to say that to me, because she's my favorite person in the world, and I worship her.
Yeah.
So I was like, done. I'm going to go to school for photography.
Oh my gosh.
And my parents were down. They were like, you know, they pretty much supported me in whatever I did. And in that, I mean, I ended up, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but in terms of like, my parents are extremely supportive, but I ended up essentially doing everything on my own. Like, it's not like I didn't get help in terms of like helping apply to schools or any of that. I did that all.
Yeah.
But whatever choice I decided to go with, they're 100% behind.
Isn't that funny? Like, I feel like nowadays parents are basically like doing their applications for their kids. My parents didn't do shit. They didn't.
Right.
Like, they had no idea what I was doing. And I'm the same. Like, I have an older sister. She's 5 years older than me. And it's the same thing. Like, I like always idolized her, and like whatever path she took, I sort of tried to take the same path. And like we went to the same schools. We both went to Northwestern, and I swear to God, it's the only reason I got in. I think it's because I feel like they favor siblings, right? So I don't think I would have gotten in had she not gotten there before. But yeah, man, it's like that power in a way. It's like this weird power of suggestion kind of thing. But like, so did you end up studying photography in high school, and like, were you practicing it?
No.
Oh, really?
Yeah, essentially I had like a baby DSLR that I took pictures of like my family with, my friends, but it's not something I like pursued heavily in high school. I just went for it in college.
So did you, when you got into school, like you didn't apply as a photography major, you were just like...
I did.
You did? Did you have to provide, did you have to send in a portfolio or anything like that?
Not the school I ended up going to, actually.
Where did you go?
RIT in Rochester, New York.
Oh, okay. Is that Rochester... What's IT?
Institute of Technology.
Okay. That's so.
It's a great photography school.
Awesome. Yeah. So then you end up graduating with a photography major?
I did. In photojournalism.
Oh, photojournalism. So. Okay. So did you want to, after you graduated, did you pursue that at all, or?
Yeah. So I graduated a little early because I had so many high school credits going in, and I had to pay out-of-state tuition. So to save my parents money and myself money, I ended up graduating almost a year early. And then I found an internship this is why I moved to Jersey City, actually, at the Jersey Journal. I found a 9-month internship, nice. Getting paid $300 a week. And I did that. I worked the late shift. So from essentially 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., 2 to 10, that was my shift.
Okay.
And I drove everywhere in Hudson County. So I covered everything from like breaking news to high school football games to like real estate shots, everything in between. And it was pretty life-changing. I discovered I didn't want to do news photography after that internship.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot.
How long was that?
9 months. And then I freelanced for a little, like on and off.
Okay.
After.
What do you think? What about? Because it sounds so actually it sounds really exciting and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because like just going around taking pictures and you're meeting so many different people and seeing what's actually happening in the world, which is very
right.
It's like very opposite my current life. I realize, like if I want to be in a bubble, I can be in a bubble and not look at anything and not know what's happening in the world. But what about that? Did you feel like you didn't like about it?
I think it's just like the lifestyle. I mean, I was like at the prime, I was like, what, 20, like in terms of peak energy and everything.
Yeah.
But it was, it's just not something I wanted to do for the rest of my life, even though it definitely made me fall in love with Jersey City.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's cool. We've got that Jersey City connection.
Yeah, definitely.
I lived there for 8 years. I think we probably had a couple years overlap. I was there from 2008 to 2017. It's 9 years. Yeah,
we had a little bit of overlap. I started working there in 2012.
Okay.
So my first year was when I covered the mayoral election.
Oh, wow.
And then it was just, it was really intense and something I never knew from my city back home. I grew up in Virginia, which I'm sure people are very active there, but in Jersey City, like so many people are community driven and active. Like every single neighborhood has an association. And it was just really inspirational to see how many people really cared. And being a photographer and a newspaper photographer with credentials, like it gave me access to a lot of things that I definitely wouldn't have seen otherwise. So
yeah. But so what you said, the lifestyle kind of turned you off about it? Was it just too much running around?
I think that's what it was, especially for the night shift. So I'd like drive from Bayonne to North Bergen to all across, and I'd eat trail mix in my car. It was so exhausting.
God. Oh, that's so funny. That reminds me of like when I was I'm trying to think of when this was. It was between I used to work in corporate advertising. No, okay. So first I was working in PR for museums. I did that for like 2 or 3 years out of grad school. And then I quit that to go work in corporate advertising. And I did that for 3 years and I hated it so much. I was like, how do I get out of this? I like needed an out really bad. And so I'm like, I think what I want to do is work in fashion styling, which I discovered. This was probably when I was like 25 or 26. And I took this course at FIT, which is the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. And I like took a few assistant jobs and I realized that job really just consists of running around town with suitcases. Like literally picking up clothes, and I'm just too poor to take cabs. So I was just like,
getting your steps in.
Yeah, just like literally taking the stuff on the subway, full suitcases full of like designer clothing and bags and jewelry, and it was so hard. And I was just like, I can't live like this. Like I'm too old. I felt too old at 26 to be able to live like that. But it was legit like hard, like really, really hard. And it was like the dead of summer, I remember, and I was just like, oh, I can't do this. So I tried that for a year, and then I ended up going back to my PR job. But anyway, yes, that reminds me. You have to think about lifestyle and what works best for you, for sure. So now you say you're working in events, and this is is this your full-time job?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. And so how do you balance that with all the weaving you're doing?
So essentially, I mean, I think with COVID in the last 2 years, that has definitely changed. But before I would weave either at night, early in the morning, or on the weekends.
Okay. And actually, I guess and it was like pure hobby at the time.
Correct.
Which I'm not saying is totally different now, because I understand it is your side hustle and it's
Mm-hmm.
going to stay a side hustle. But even now, like, I like, how do you balance it with like commissions and everything like that? Like, are you taking fewer of them? Are you taking a step back like when you need to? How are you not getting overwhelmed?
I definitely take fewer, and then I give like very generous lead times. Like
Okay.
this is not something I'm already a really slow weaver, and that it takes me forever to weave one piece. So I usually estimate like a couple months for people. I lower their expectations, and if I get to it faster, then great. But mostly people have been very understanding. I had quite a list going actually at the end of 2019, which turned into wait a minute. I had quite a list at the end of 2020. And then when we rolled into 2021, I had so much energy, and then so much life happened. So my mom actually got a little sick around February, and that just really tore down my trajectory. And then they really piled up. And I finally got through that list maybe 2 months ago and started taking on new commissions from there. But I mean, I had people waiting months.
Yeah, I know. And it's hard to carry that burden on top of, I'm sure, whatever was going on with your mom. Is your mom okay now?
Yes, she's great.
Okay.
But it was definitely, I wrote a lot of apology emails. But ultimately, people were really understanding.
That's good.
So,
so
I was very fortunate.
Yeah, very fortunate. Well, I mean, like, how can people not be understanding for something like that? You know what I mean? So did you take time off of your day job? Yeah. And you stayed with your mom?
Correct. So my older sister and I actually flew down for like most of February to stay with her, which luckily I was able to do with like arrange it through my work, and they were super supportive. So
that's good. Oh, and also I guess by this point most people are working from home anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So how did life sort of change with the pandemic for you, and with the balance of dealing with your weaving work and your day job?
Right. I mean, essentially, like, the industry I'm in, it was an absolute bloodbath starting in March last year.
Right. Yeah. Were you furloughed, or how did that work for you?
I was working up until July full time, and then I was furloughed on reduced hours. So still employed, just working a lot less per week, which definitely freed up my time to focus more on weaving. And luckily, weaving is something you can do from home.
Yeah.
So I did that for a little bit, and then came back full time once restrictions kind of lessened and the vaccine came out. So
okay, cool. Wait, so what kind of events do you guys do?
So I work for like a small venue management company, and I run 2 venues. So I essentially handle everything from like initial inquiry up to contract. So we have clients, we do like fashion shows, we do conferences. Both the spaces are pretty large.
Mm-hmm. Are they all in Manhattan?
Correct. Both of them are in Manhattan.
Awesome. It sounds fun.
It is. It's really interesting to see it from the point of view of a venue. And so I can see how the space is transformed by people. Definitely seeing some cool things. Yeah. And people do really creative things out of like these concepts that people take. It's really cool, actually.
Yeah. Wait, so does that make, do you have to work a lot of weekends then? Like weekend events, or is it mostly just during the week?
I don't. I mean, my position is really rare in events, in that I pretty much work 9 to 5.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I was thinking, I mean, if like people doing weddings or even corporate events oftentimes end up having to work weekends. So that's awesome that you don't have to.
Oh my gosh. It's definitely very rare.
Yeah.
It's very rare in events. But it works out perfectly in terms of weaving, because it does like afford me the time to do it.
And with the day job and everything, do your parents like I don't know. With mine, they're always like, don't get too tired, especially when I was doing both. Okay. So when I was doing full-time day job, full-time making, it was like, it really took a toll. Does it, I guess I'm just wondering, like, do they worry about you in that sense? Like, are they like, do they feel, or do you feel like, one thing ever has to give or not?
No, I don't think so. I also don't think they particularly know like the extent of my weaving.
Okay.
Like they know it's something I love to do and that I do and that I own like a room full of yarn. But I think beyond that, they just don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know how much time it takes up. Or like my mom owns a piece of mine and she will go out and she'll buy yarn for me. But in terms of I don't think they're aware. But I think like it's funny. So even when I was doing the photography at the paper, my mom would be worried about like me being out in the elements and
especially at night.
At
night, I was even thinking, oh my God, that's so dangerous in Jersey City too. Like nighttime in Jersey City is not like it's scary, especially in certain areas. It's like pretty dangerous.
But I mean, ultimately, they're kind of like, it's your life. We trust you to make your decisions, and if you need anything, let us know. But otherwise, they're pretty, I guess, hands off.
Yeah,
would be the best term. I'm also older now,
right?
So
it is. It's like you make your decisions. And,
right.
Yeah,
exactly.
And they have to let go.
But they've kind of always trusted me with those things. So
that's good. You're lucky. Even as are you the youngest kid?
I am. I mean, I have a younger sister. She's my cousin, but my family adopted her, and she's younger than me, but she's like 25. So
right. Did they adopt her when you guys were really little, or what happened?
Yeah, she was 11.
Mm-hmm.
So her parents, basically her whole family came to America, and then they ended up going back to Korea, and she wanted to stay, so we ended up adopting her. And my parents have essentially raised her since she was 11.
Oh wow!
And she's amazing. We call her the favorite.
Oh yes. So really, you're like a middle child.
Exactly. I feel like a middle child, even though she came into our lives a little later. She's the one that like calls us, being like, "Yo, you really have to call your parents. Like you should really check up on them because they talk pretty often." And
really?
I think they've like perfected their parenting on her. Yeah. She's seriously amazing.
That's so funny. I always think if I had a third, I could perfect my parenting.
Yeah, exactly.
One, totally.
Like everything they learned.
Yeah.
She's seriously so great.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So it sounds like you have a really good relationship with all of your, and I'll call them all sisters. That's great. Are they all in the New Jersey area?
So my sister actually lives in Brooklyn. My older sister lives in Brooklyn. My younger sister lives in like the DC area.
Nice. Cool. And and back to the immigrant story, because like when we recorded last time, you had a really cool story to share about your parents and how they met and immigrated. Can you let us know? It's fun.
Yeah, so my parents, I think like in terms of like their impact on me, I think immigrant guilt is very real. Like when you have parents who went through so much to come here, like you kind of feel the impact of that. So I think it's a testament to how supportive they are in terms of like, I went into photography. I took an internship that paid so little right out of school, my very expensive school. But throughout the whole time, like they had my back. But in terms of like them, so my parents met when they were very young. They met at a factory making candy. They both, like my mom was the oldest of her siblings. My dad's the youngest, but they met when they were probably like 18, 19. They got pregnant. They ran away together to Jeju-do, which is an island off of Korea. And my mom essentially had my sister at home. They were so broke. And then my mom ran like an actual, like a snack stand, like on the ocean. And she says she like refuses. My dad wants to move back there when they retire because he actually still keeps in touch with his friends. But my mom was like, the place reminds her of so many sad things that she doesn't want to go back. Right. But
did that affect, I mean, did they end up cutting ties with their parents because they had to run away?
I mean, essentially, I guess I don't know all the details, but they ran away. My grandfather found them, brought them back, and then they ran away forever.
Oh,
Essentially
wow. When they moved to the States.
no, to the island,
Oh,
to
okay.
Jewel. I mean, I'm assuming they ended up reconciling because I did, see my grandfather later on.
Okay.
But what had happened was my father, he had an older sister who married an American who brought her to the States. And she actually
Okay.
ended up bringing her mother and both her brothers over. And my dad had that passage to go, but my mom was actually pregnant with my older brother that she actually ended up miscarrying. So when my mom got pregnant, he decided to stay in Korea. And then when she miscarried, he was like it was so life changing that he
Yeah.
decided to come to America.
Okay.
That was kind of like the catalyst of it actually. And then he worked and then brought my sister and my mom over.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what a
Yeah, it's
crazy
quite a story.
story.
Yeah.
So you did end up knowing both of your grandparents. I guess a little. I mean, who knows when they're still over there and that kind of stuff. It's hard to know them, but
Yeah, I did. I had a grandparent on either side
okay,
who were still living while I was growing up, who I got to see
nice. Did they live with you guys?
on and off. Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely think my childhood was like revolving door of family members and friends, and I definitely had a very open household and like childhood that way. So like those things don't necessarily phase me, like having people in and out, like opening up my home, that sort of thing.
It's so funny. It just reminds me because we sort of had that too. Like my cousins lived with us for a while. My grandma lived with us for a while, and
Mm-hmm.
then they'd go over to
Exactly.
like another cousin's or another aunt and
Mm-hmm.
uncle's house. But this same thing happened with my husband. So he's Russian Jewish, right? And they came over when he was 3 through like a Jewish organization. And so by when they were here, of course, they felt, his parents felt the need to like open their house to basically every person trying to like transition into living here. And he was so resentful. He says he remembers being like 8 years old, and like he'd be like, "Who are all these strangers in our house?" Like constant. He said it was like a constant revolving door. He did not take to it well, which is
Yeah.
funny because now
Oh,
he's like such an introvert.
funny. I can definitely relate to that. My dad pretty much, he's just so generous. He says he got so much help when he came
Mm-hmm.
that once he hears a story, he like can't help but pass it or like pay it forward essentially. But it's interesting. I feel like my partner is he's Polish. He immigrated here when he was 7. And I found that even though he isn't Korean, like we find a lot of parallels in terms of our childhoods having immigrant parents,
Yeah.
and being essentially like parentified when we're younger in terms of like doing all the paperwork for them and translating. And I was really like pleasantly surprised to learn that we had so much in common.
Yeah, no, I know. I know exactly what you mean. I felt the same
Mhm.
thing. Like I was like, is this going to be too different? Is our cultures going to be too different? And they are different in a lot of ways, but in terms of like the family, sort of like the
Right.
family tightness, it's very similar for sure. So how did you and your partner meet?
We actually met at the paper.
Oh, you did? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
So have you
yeah.
been together for a while?
We have. I mean, we didn't start dating until after our internships were over, but that is where we met. I took pictures and he wrote. So
Okay. Oh, cute. You were both interns. Did you start wait, did you say sorry, I blanked out for a minute. Did you say you started dating after or while you were there?
yes,
Oh,
yeah,
after.
we like reconnected afterwards.
Okay. That's awesome. Did you feel a spark when you first met him or were you like whatever?
Well, he was seeing someone,
Okay.
so I wouldn't say there was any initial like interest there, just because when you're introduced to someone and you find out that they're dating someone, it's like,
Right. You trying to shut that part
I,
off. Just,
yeah, I didn't even think that was an option. So
yeah. So how did it then rekindle?
yeah, he asked me out to lunch.
And
And
that
at the
was
lunch,
it.
I discovered they had broken up. Yeah,
And that's all it took.
exactly.
Nice. So when he asked you out, was it with the intention to
I
see?
have no idea.
You don't
I
know?
don't
You
think
didn't
so.
talk about it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we used to work Saturday shifts together, which means like I would pick him up and we drive around. And I don't know. I think we were. I mean, we were really good friends.
Yeah. Oh, you were like legitimate friends. It's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
That's nice. So then how long have you guys been together?
Gosh, on and off for like 8 years.
Oh, wow. Nice. Are you ready for the next step or are you guys just chilling?
I would say we're making moves to the next step. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I mean, good if that's what you want to do. Good. Awesome. Well, I mean, is there anything else you want to share about your weaving journey or even your personal journey? Like, I know you had gone a little bit quiet off on Instagram for a while, and I've seen you pop back up recently.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely think I know people use this word too much to talk about the last 2 years, but unprecedented. Like we are in a very historic time right now, and kind of navigating that was difficult in that, but luckily, like I have the luxury of not having to keep up on social media for, to live, for work. So I could afford to lay low for a little bit. I didn't know what to post, like after what went down with my mom and the all the Asian hate crimes, and I just didn't have like the capacity to do it. But I've definitely popped, like I think I posted maybe like once a month over the summer, and then I think finally I posted like twice last month. So I'm getting there. I'm getting back on. But it was definitely a privilege to be able to do that.
Yeah.
To keep on. Yeah.
No, I know. It's so crazy. It's so hard too with the news today. It's like the whole structure of it is, I don't know. It's very frustrating because it feels insurmountable. The way that we're fed news, the way that we consume it, even with Asian hate crimes, like I was glad to see that at least I was seeing the news of it and that that people were more aware of what was going on. But then I don't know. It's like I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Just because everything is, it's all about clickbait, right? Like every headline now, and you used to work in the news. I mean, I think you worked in the news when it was a time when it was like real, when it was like not completely, I mean, it was for profit. Like, we don't have only like we have PBS or whatever. But like, I feel like with everything being a for-profit entity, even my regular news sources, it's hard to even trust those nowadays because I'm like, why are you sharing this? This is so stupid. And you realize it's just like it's a jazzy headline or whatever. Like even in the New York Times, I'm like, why are you doing this? I worked in PR, so I'm like, I've had a huge respect for the news for such a long time, and now you just see so many things that are like, they're literally just there for your clicks, and I don't know. It's very frustrating for me as a human on this earth and in this world. But yeah, it's hard. Like, I don't know. Like just the bubble.
I think there's just, right. I think there's just so many sources of where you can get your content now that people are fighting for your attention, and they're trying to do that in whatever way is possible. And I think in terms of like the New York Times and like the Washington Post, like these are institutions who've had years of, I guess, reputation that they're falling back on. But ultimately, like you consume what you choose to consume, and you read what you choose to read and what you surround yourself with. And I think that is, we're all trying to get by, right?
No, I know. And it's hard. And like, even on my Facebook, I realize that I get most of my news from Facebook just because I don't want to go click on 20 different news sites. But what I've stopped doing is clicking on any of them, like none of them, because, each click you do, whichever way it sways is what you're going to get more of. Right. So like most of mine is Washington Post and New York Times. But like I'll see, because I live in Sussex County, which is like a super red area. And, and a lot of the people who live here are whatever, Fox News people. And so I'll see stuff that they comment on, and it's always infuriating. But like, I think I'm seeing both sides sometimes, but I've just decided like I'm going to scroll and I'll read a headline, but I'm going to keep scrolling. I'm not clicking on anything anymore because I feel like that's the only way. It's like almost the only way to live with any kind of sanity now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
to get Facebook off your back a little.
Kind of. But at the same time, this is the only place I'm going for my news headlines. And that's the thing. I guess I'm not intentionally seeking news, right? Like,
right.
I mean, I'll be honest, like since Biden took office, I just stopped paying a lot of attention because it was taking up too much space and energy, like following the whole Trump era from 2016 to 2020. It was just like, it was like a nonstop barrage. And like, I mean, that's what made those companies money, to be honest. Like he was the best thing for the newspapers. They all made money because of him. You know what I mean? And now I see them like continuing to post Trump stuff because they're still trying to get clicks because they need to make money. And I get it, but it's like this vicious cycle, you know? It's really hard. It's just hard to know. I mean, I don't think it's hard for me to know what's truth, but it's so hard for people to distinguish what is.
Yeah. I would advise people to like hyper focus on local news, like support your local newspaper and like really see what's going on in like your school board meetings or your local council meetings. Because I think that affects you the most in terms of like, your day-to-day life.
So true.
And it kind of gives you perspective. And then from there, you can kind of go farther out. So that's what I would recommend. I mean, ultimately, like we all live in our little bubbles, right? Like, like I live in northern New Jersey in a really diverse area, and I work in New York City, which is another really diverse area. So I don't see as much of both sides as in terms of like my Facebook or anything like that. So
I know it's interesting because I think you're absolutely right that is more of what matters than anything else. And we sit there getting infuriated about federal stuff that is 99% not going to do anything to your regular life. It's so crazy because I've watched my father-in-law become like pure, like full QAnon. And like
that's intense.
It's so intense. Like they can't even, when they just moved, but they were in Brooklyn. They just moved to Texas. And with them also being Russian, you know, I know they're super anti-liberal just because they're so scared of communism coming to the United States. And I get that. I totally get that. It's like the Russians and the Cubans are never going to be liberals. It's just the way it is. But because like they basically retired in 2020, like with the pandemic. And then they had all this time to just sit on their computers and go down the YouTube rabbit holes that just kept feeding up. But when I say he's gone full QAnon, I mean, he's gone full conspiracy in general, like chemtrails he believes in. And like, I'm sure he believes the whole like, whatever, Pizzagate stuff. And I mean, I can't talk about it. He comes over and we'll be like, let's not, like, I tell my husband before they come, like, let's stay off of politics. No politics, nothing. And like, we won't. And then he'll bring something up randomly out of the blue. And we're like, no, we weren't even talking about that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we'll be talking about our yard or something. And he'll go, you know, Biden's going to make it so there's poor people living in your backyard, right? That they're going to build apartments in your backyard. My literal backyard, which is the woods. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, he just has gone so crazy. And there's like no reining it in. There's no reining it in because he has time. Right. And I think the pandemic did that for a lot of people, actually. It was like too much time and too many algorithms on the internet that only give you one thing, you know? So it's tough
Slippery
stuff.
slope. I feel for you.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something you don't want to discuss, but you feel like you're pulled into it.
Well, and it just becomes shouting matches. Like, and not even between me. Like a couple of times I've lost my shit and just been like, you're crazy. Like, this is, you know, I don't even know what you're talking about anymore. But like my husband, because he feels, of course, it's his parents, so he can totally go off on them. And it's funny, my mother-in-law will just sit there. Like she is a regular conservative, if you know what I mean. Like, so I don't think she's gone full conspiracy theory. Like, she'll be like, he's crazy, like talking about her husband. She's like, I can't stop him. I'm like, you have to take the computer away from him, you know? But no, it's hard. It's hard. And I think it's happened to a lot of families. I think it's like really broken up a lot of people.
Yeah, I definitely think it's opened a lot of people's eyes. And
yeah,
it's definitely like these past 2 years, man. I don't know how else to say it, but This shit is crazy.
No, it is. It completely is. Is your boyfriend or your partners, are his parents in the area? Like, do you see them a lot?
Yeah, they actually live across the street from us.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. You are renting the house across the street, or you?
Correct.
Okay. Awesome.
So his sister actually used to live here, and when they moved to California, the the home was open. And in terms of, this was kind of the best case scenario. He and his father, they work in the same place, and so he could drive him to work. They can go together. It just
so they like they're really close.
Oh yeah, we're in a 2-bedroom house, and my my stipulation for moving in with him and leaving Jersey City was that in our 2 bedrooms, one of the bedrooms would officially be like my yarn craft room. But like, I look out the window into their house, so I can see them when they come home. I can see them when they leave.
Does that feel like a little too close, or do you like it?
No,
it's fine.
No, I don't mind it all. No, yeah.
It's so funny. I must have some issues, because I'm always like, if I think about, because my parents my dad just retired, and like they're trying to figure out where to go. And it's like, as much as I want to be close, I'm like, but I don't want to be too close, you know? And then like it was actually nice with my in-laws used to live in Brooklyn. So they would watch our kids, when we were in Jersey City, especially, like they would take the kids all the time. And it was especially at a point, like it was when my kids were very young, when I really needed the breaks,
right.
which was so helpful and so valuable for us. But it's funny now, they're like, now that we're in Texas, like we moved here because we thought you were going to move here. We're like, you can't make your life decisions based on like what we might do or what we might not do or whatever. But like, I wonder, like, I don't know if it's like the teenage rebel in me that I don't want like parents so close. Like, I don't know. Do I have some weird issue? I don't know.
I mean, I think it depends on your relationship with them.
Yeah.
Like we joke, my partner and I joke that we're going to buy like a 2-family home and stick his parents on one side and stick my parents at the other.
Yeah.
But like my parents, like they have definitely built a community for themselves. Like back in Virginia where I grew up, they have a huge group of friends. Like my parents, like sometimes we joke, like when we go home to visit, say it's like for 3 days, and for 2 of the nights my parents have plans, they like won't cancel them.
That's really, they're very independent. That's good.
Oh my gosh, yes. My dad has he's a Swati, so he's a year of the ox. So he has a group of friends where they're all the same age. So this year, actually I think this year was the year of all their birthdays. They turned 60, which is pretty.
Oh, they're young. You have young parents.
Yeah. It used to be a big deal in Korean culture to turn 60, but now he says like 80's the new 60, so don't celebrate his 60th birthday. But it's pretty dope. I mean, he sees these men like 3 times a week, like as a group, and then he sees like one of his friends on the regular every day. So I admire what they have going for themselves.
Yeah. That's super cool. Like my dad is now 75, and it's kind of sad. I mean, now that they're older, he's the last person out of all of his friends to retire. And so he even told me, he's
retired a little later.
Yeah, late. Like, and he told me this literally, I mean, he retired like 2 weeks ago. So I was like, Dad, how do you feel? You're finally free, right? And I feel bad because my sister and I couldn't go there on his last day. I don't know what we would have done because they weren't really throwing a party. I don't know. With COVID and things, like things just got kind of screwed up. But I'm like, how do you feel, Appa? And he's like, to be honest, feels a little empty. And I was like, oh my God. And that's like the first time he's ever said anything like honest and emotional to me, like ever. Okay, like ever. Even in my grandma's funeral, like, I saw him like shed a tear, but he like didn't say anything. Right? Everything's been quiet. He's a very silent man. And I like couldn't believe he said that. And then now I'm so worried about him because my parents were saying, like, even trying to figure out where to retire, they're like, well, most of our friends have died. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God, this is crazy. Or they're just not they're not in the physical shape to even be, like active retirees. So I'm like, right. And my parents are actually in pretty good health. So I don't know what my point is. It's just that like, it's scary. This part of this
Have them move to Virginia. I'll hook
Stage
them
in
up with my
life.
parents.
Well, they were looking at Virginia a lot. Because like they have like 3 friends who are still left in that area that like, that are still active and stuff. So actually, whenever they visit New Jersey and stay with me, they'll take like a drive down to Virginia, visit some friends, look at houses to possibly retire by. I think they're waiting now because the market's gone too crazy. But yeah, no, they love Virginia. It's so funny. I bet in some ways our parents are probably connected by like 3 degrees of separation.
They know someone who knows someone.
For sure. At
probably.
Church. Yep.
Community is important.
Yeah, so. Definitely. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're going to end up staying with me a lot. You know what I realized as I was mentioning that like I must have some kind of weird issue, and it is. I have a very weird issue with my parents. Like we're good. I would say you are one of the only Korean Americans that I know who have a really, sounds like a super healthy relationship with your parents. I think you might be the only one. But mine with my parents is always so fraught, and it's not, my dad is great, actually. He's great. Maybe because he's silent usually, but my mom, just like, she's the naggiest of nags. So I welcome them into my house. I'm happy to have them. Also because they are pretty independent too. Like they'll go visit friends and family or whatever. But whenever they're here, my mom just like, she just finds things wrong with everything. So she'll like buy a new sink drain filter because she doesn't like the one we're using, or like, and it's all, I think she thinks she's helping, but the way I perceive it is all judgment. And I don't know if that's just me or like, I don't know, everything that just comes out. I don't know if it's like the Korean English language barrier too, because I understand Korean, but I always respond in English. And it just, I think I don't know, maybe it's just because it sounds harsher, or like,
I think you have the context of your relationship with her. And I would say like me and my parents, like I compartmentalize pretty well. So there's always that language barrier. My Korean is good. I'm not like fluent by any means, but I've definitely found like as I've gotten older, I think everyone goes through the period where they find out like your parents aren't, superheroes. Right. And you kind of go through that period. And then, but now as I'm getting older, I'm learning so much more about them and who they are as people rather than just like as my parents. So it's like learning more about their financial situation, or learning more about, they're just so much more open and they treat me more like an adult as well. So I think it's definitely blossoming into a relationship that I enjoy. Like my mom and I will talk on the phone for so much longer than I ever had when I was younger. So I'm definitely enjoying this like new season of our relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I will say it has definitely for me gotten way better as I've gotten older, because I think they've learned, or my mom has learned to mostly bite her tongue when she sees things. But like the last time she visited, we had the best visit. They were here for like a full week. And it was like the night before she left, she had to she dropped 2 bombs about things she's unhappy about in my life. And they're stupid things.
So you have like another layer of like relationship there. Like I don't have any children. So you kind of have like that to deal with in terms of like if she says something about your parenting or your children. So
no, and it's not even that. It's not even that. Like that kind of stuff I kind of understand, but it's like nitpicky, like stupid stuff that honestly she could come and go without saying anything. It was like the last time
your hair color or something.
Well, no. And that's one thing actually she does not say anything about, because she's used to this. Like, I'm going to change it. Like, she used to be like, your hair's all going to fall out. And now that I have so much hair, I'm like, really? It's not going anywhere. But it was so stupid. The shower, she was like, the kids need a shower that like has a handle that can come off, so they can get cleaner. I'm like, are you telling me my kids are dirty? Like, this is how I interpret it. And then the other thing, and like, you know what? The thing is, she's probably right. They probably would enjoy a shower head that they can hold. But because she said it, I'm not going to do it. And then what was the other one? Oh, my husband he put in closet systems in the kids' room, like really good ones, with drawers and a bunch of different levels of hanging stuff. And he did it while they were visiting. And she was like, what happened up there? Because there was like some angle that didn't look exactly flush with the wall. And it was like, why don't you just say good job? You know what I mean? Like she had to like point at something and like totally nitpick at it. And she fixated too. Like she didn't just like let it go after that. We were like, oh, Mom, we were like, okay, great, whatever. And she's like, no, but why did you do it this way? And my husband finally was like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Right. And then she just kept going on and on about how it should be one way. And he just kept going, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. And then finally he goes, fine, next time you can just, oh no, she goes, next time, let me be your assistant, like cutting the wood so that I can do it properly. And I was like, oh my God. Like, why?
You know, there's this podcast I listened to with like different therapy sessions. And there was one that I think actually reminds me a lot of that.
Really? Oh my God. Yeah. That's the one thing. We've never done therapy. Like I've never done family therapy or whatever. Oh my God. I think the things that would come out. Would be so, I don't know that they would ever do it, but no, I'm sure at this age they would probably never do it. They also do not want people looking into their lives, which is funny since I now spew it all on a public podcast, but they'll never listen to it, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. Anyway.
Who knows? Who thought this would come out in a fiber podcast? Right?
I know. Well, I share everything. If people ask, I share. Even if people don't ask, I share. So whatever. This is my therapy, I guess. Anyway, so do your parents get along with your partner? Yeah,
definitely. I think like my mom used to always say like she'd prefer me with someone Korean just due to the language barrier. She like wants, but then later she was like, you know what? She's like, how often would I talk to them anyway? So they're definitely of the, like I keep on like they're definitely of the opinion like as long as I'm happy, they trust me to make my own choices. But like me relaying about how much like similarities we have in terms of having immigrant parents and how much he does for his parents, like they really respect that from him.
That's great. Yeah. I know. I think when they see that kind of thing, they worry less, you know? Yeah. I think for me, my husband, I think it was less about him not being Korean, which was surprising to me. I thought they were going to make a big deal about that, and it was less that, and it was more that he was Jewish because my parents are very, very, very Christian. So I think they were worried about that. But I mean, I don't go to church anymore, really. So I think that's actually their biggest issue with our family in general. Like that, I'm sure it breaks their heart a bit. But I've got too many complex feelings about that. I'm not going to get into now.
We've spoken about it.
Yeah.
I can relate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just different now. I don't know. I think the churches are changing too, though, to be honest. I think things are even getting more progressive in the church. Like my mom, they just made her an elder, which is huge, I think, in the Presbyterian church. It wasn't until like a couple years ago that they allowed that. So that's a step, you know, because she's a woman.
Right. And women are like the heart of most Korean churches, though. Like it's the women who plan everything, who like these churches wouldn't exist without the women running them.
They do every administrative thing that you could think of, they do and execute. Like even the flowers. I mean, it's just like example, but it's true. But to be honest, I think that's exactly what happened in Jesus' time too. It was like Mary Magdalene, and he had just like I was going to say harem of women, not a harem, but like I mean, he was deep. It was all women around him basically, and then like a few apostles that were the quote unquote leaders. But the women did everything. The women bankrolled everything. Do you ever listen to Rob Bell? Have you heard of him? Oh, he's like a spiritual. He's like the one guy that led me back to Christianity in a different way, like more like the way the Bible was meant to be read and interpreted, and not the way they did it in our churches. It's different. I don't know. It's a really interesting thing. He wrote this book called What is the Bible? And when I read that, I was like, oh, like things super clicked for me, and I was like, oh, I mean, because that's not the way it was taught, you know, like with females being in power, it was not the way it was taught. And when you look at it in the way that Jesus traveled and the way things were funded and all this, it was like women did it all. That's a long tangent.
I think, I mean, I for like as someone who like grew up attending church, I think a lot of people go through that revolution of like in like college where you try to figure out like what. Because it's so hard to like divorce yourself from something where you were taught it as truth. So rediscovering it as an adult is definitely a different experience, or finding God or Christ when you're older and under your own volition is it's so different. For me, like it's a struggle. but I had a cousin of mine who passed away when he was, God, I think he was like 20. And in, and he had such strong faith that ultimately, like, wherever he is where I want to be. So that kind of tethers me to that.
Yeah.
I mean, right now I pretty much only pray in like extreme times of duress, or like on a plane. It's habitual, you know. I can't
when you're taking off.
Yes,
I do that too when I'm
and
taking
landing.
off. Yeah.
So like that's never gonna leave me. But it's definitely it's a journey, right? So
yeah, for sure. I think what was hard as a kid too is like we weren't encouraged to ask questions. I think it was just just listen to the message, absorb it, take it in, think about it, whatever, but don't really ask questions about it, you know? And I mean, I remember being in church camp, like Korean church camp, and someone asked like a question about because in the Bible it was like I think after Cain killed Abel, they skip over this whole part where Cain ends up going to whatever land and there's a whole group of people there. So he's like, where'd all those people come from? And if they're
valid question,
the third and fourth people on the earth, like, true, valid question. Yeah. And then like we were at church camp, and I think whoever the minister was just like, there are some things we just don't know. It was like, okay, which is probably true. But you know, you just like, you go, oh, okay, then what they're saying is not all, how do I believe all of this then, you know? But anyway, that is definitely a conversation for another time that none of us are going to be able to answer, I guess. Anyway, oh my gosh, it's been over an hour. Alyssa, thank you for coming back on. This is actually really fun to chat more about like our families and stuff. I don't know if anyone's going to relate to this. If you guys are still listening, thank you.
They were like, where is the fiber?
I know. But you know what though? I mean, here's the thing. And I said this, I don't know if I said this on record or not with the last person I was talking to. It was like, I would like to talk about the art, but there's only so much we can talk about the art. Like, I think some people actually have a hard time talking about what they make because it's intuitive. They make it's intuitive. The way that they approach the creativity is like, I like color. I don't like color. You know what I mean? I think about different color palettes by looking at nature. And it's like a lot of us, I think, are inspired by a lot of the same things. We're all getting kind of the same inspiration. So I was thinking, even with the podcast, I think I was at I kind of hit a wall with it because I was like, I think I'm just going to get the same answers from people, you know? So I'm like, what I think is more interesting is the people who are creating the work and who they are and the lives they come from and the people they come from. You know what I mean? Like just hearing about people's...
feel, right. Like on Instagram, I do love, I've definitely made friends off of it. And I feel like I know these people.
Totally.
Like even, I mean, I personally don't share so much about my personal life just because I don't know how to, and I hate being in front of the camera, and I don't know if people are interested in that, which I find funny because I'm so interested. I like want to see what your kids are doing, and
yeah,
that's
totally
definitely an aspect of Instagram I love.
Yeah, I know exactly. And you know, people can talk about their personal lives on Instagram, and we do, but I think the attention span is so low when you can condense it all into like an hour-long podcast and talk about the things that you're feeling and whatever it is, you know. I don't know, it's like a easier way to absorb the information and get the information about what's happening behind the work, you know, to the person who's creating the work, which for me, I don't know, I find more interesting and more dynamic, you know, because that's someplace, well, like we all come together and we all have a commonality with the fiber.
Right.
But where we don't have the commonality is like who we are and who, you know, like the person who's creating the work. So anyway, that's why I get into the stuff that's not actually fiber related.
Right. I'm honored.
Well, thank you, Alyssa. Thanks again. And I guess one more time, if you can just let people know where they can find you.
So my Instagram handle is SOLIP. It's Solip. It's actually my Korean name. It's my middle name. And when I first made the handle, I figured it's funny. In high school, I was like, you know what? When I go to college, I'm going to make people call me Solip. That never happened. Like my first name is Alyssa. That's what I go by. But I figured, you know, like I'm proud of being Korean. It's in my bio. Might as well put it out for people. And when I first started, I really thought I'd go beyond just weaving, but that's where the DIY comes from. But
nice.
Yeah. So it's Solip DIY, and it's SOLIPDIY.com.
Nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Actually, this brings me to one more question, though. Mm-hmm. If you had more time, what kinds of things would you want to be experimenting with in your DIY world?
I would definitely work on installations. Like, I want to work on like big pieces.
Yeah. Any other kind of craft in the craft world or whatever? Because you were saying you might have wanted it to be like more with the Solip DIY. Mm-hmm. In any other industry, or just in fiber?
I would say like yarn and fiber is like what gets me going.
Yeah.
But I got a sewing machine for Christmas last year, and I've always wanted to like quilt. And so I just haven't. I took lessons for a little bit, but like time is limited, and weaving takes up so much of it. And like willingly, like I love it so much that I don't have like the capacity yet to go on the sewing route, but hopefully.
Yeah, you'll find it. You'll find it eventually.
Yeah, eventually, right? But
it'll work its way in.
It's like all in, right?
Totally. I think those things come to us when, like at the right times when we need them. You know.
Yeah, I mean, but 3 years in, the weaving is still going strong.
Totally. I know. That's why I still like it. I still marvel that you're, still working totally full time and then weaving full time. Mm-hmm. Like, girl, make sure you sleep.
Definitely. I get plenty of sleep. But, I personally don't have plans on taking weaving full time, but that's partly because I have like no business sense whatsoever, and I really admire people who are able to do it. So full support. Like, I buy classes from everyone. I buy yarn from everyone. I buy yarn from people who don't even realize. Like, I use a different email, so it's not like I use my like IG handle at all.
Oh,
so
right.
It's funny. So I'll like post things in my stories, and people don't even realize that I bought them.
Oh,
but it's a hobby in itself, just the sheer consumption. But
yeah, well, you are a full on fiber supporter, which is amazing.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, if you look at my
even
history,
me personally, like my shop is like, oh, Alyssa. Yeah. You and my art yarn have a very nice relationship.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you, because makes me happy every time I can see it in one of your pieces. So.
Gosh.
All right. Well, thanks again. I'm sure I will be talking to you soon. Okay, bye. Check the show notes of each episode to get the website and Instagram for each of the fiber artists I speak with. Be sure to give them a follow. And you can view video from this podcast on niromastudio.com/thefiberartistpodcast. If you enjoy the Fiber Artist Podcast, go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening.